What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at secrets of the euro. If you've never been here before, I am Mace, your host, the best host on the West Coast, in fact. I'm from Canada. I'm here on Vancouver Island, just off the coast of British Columbia, and yeah, secrets of the euro. I don't know much about the history of the euro or any of the real complexities of how it worked or how it, the origin of it, how it came to be. I know that it's the currency of the EU. When that came into place, I'm not sure if it was it the mid-90s or early 2000s? Yeah. So this will be an interesting video just to find out some secrets of this particular currency. Let's get it.
Prior to 2002, most European countries had their own independent currencies. France had the French franc,
2002.
Italy had the Italian lira, and Finland had the Finnish marker, to name just a few. It made trade and travel a lot more complicated, as you needed to change your money for each different country, often incurring exchange rates, commissions and fees.
So what literally every other country has to do, this is, it definitely makes sense because you have so many countries in close proximity to each other to increase and optimize, tourism and all of these things without all of these extraneous costs.
What's more, there was often vast disparity between the values of each currency. Whilst the Italian lira banknote stretched all the way up to 500,000, the highest denomination French franc was only 500. So if you were visiting one from the other, it would be very difficult to gauge how much you were actually spending. In practice, it was a nightmare. The case for a shared common currency was therefore an obvious one, and it was an idea that had been talked about and was being worked towards for decades. Without getting into the precise history, the euro as we know it was first introduced for non-cash transactions on New Year's Day 1999, and then the first banknotes and coins on New Year's Day 2002. The only countries that did not adopt the currency were Denmark and the United Kingdom, although there are several other EU countries who don't yet meet the economic criteria, but will make the change once they do. And since those first banknotes were launched in 2002, they've just finished releasing a new and updated series, which this video is going to take a look at. Now, I'm not going to get into any of the pros and cons of the currency, or any of the economic arguments or considerations. Instead, I'm going to approach the euro purely as a banknote collector, as someone who likes shiny and colourful objects.
Okay, so that's interesting. He's not really going to go into the complexity or the pros and cons, like he just said, but he's more so going to be looking at the aesthetics and from a more art collector viewpoint, which is cool.
With a cool story, not as a critic of the currency itself. If you enjoy this video, please consider subscribing. Now normally I'd go through and talk about each banknote individually, but with the euro it makes much more sense to talk about them collectively. These new notes are known as the Europa series, and they are very much a series, with each denomination just a slight variant on the overall design. Like the previous series, the notes have retained their size, colour and the theme of European architecture. The front of each denomination displays a window or doorway to represent openness and cooperation, whilst the reverse depicts a bridge, symbolising communication. The €5 sees a classical architecture style, the 10 Romanesque, the 20 Gothic, the 50 Renaissance, the 100 Baroque, and the 200 a 19th century iron and glass theme. The old 500 note had the theme of modern 20th century architecture, although has been discontinued and is slowly being removed from circulation. Importantly though, none of the specific doorways, windows or bridges shown are real. They're fictional designs, intended to represent each of the original members but without unfairly representing one more than the other. Also, like the previous series, the reverse of each note features a map of Europe, although this time including Malta and Cyprus, who have both since joined the Eurozone, as well as a tiny section right in the bottom left to show the Canary Islands and some of France's territories. But that's about it for the similarities, so what exactly has changed? Well, the denomination in the bottom left has been replaced by one in green colour changing ink, making it difficult to replicate. And on the 100 and 200 notes, it even contains tiny euro symbols. There's also a larger holographic strip.
So yeah, there's definitely, I can see some similarities to the new bills and currency that we've released here in Canada in the last, I think it was in the the late 2000s, the late 2000 zero. What do you call them? Like 2000 to 2010. Yeah, the late 20000s. Yeah, they started releasing similar bills like this, and they have anti counterfeiting measures implemented onto them, kind of similar to this thing with where it says Euro here on the side with the shiny part.
On the right, this time containing an image of Europa, a figure from Greek mythology after whom the continent was named. Europa can also be seen in the watermark of each note, alongside the denomination and piece of architecture, although admittedly it does kind of resemble a kid's drawing.
Yeah.
In terms of other security features, both series are fairly similar. Obviously they all featured the Orion constellation, a group of 5 circles or donuts which can be detected by printers and computer software in order to prevent photocopying. This feature was included on banknotes in secret for many years, until a member of the public first detected it on a €10 note, hence the name and the fact that it sort of doesn't really resemble Orion. Under UV light, certain elements of the notes glow to indicate their
That's super smart to have had like kind of a hidden measure to prevent and be able to detect counterfeits.
authenticity, including the stars in the flag and the stars around the architecture, as well as certain sections of the reverse. Tiny glowing flecks are also visible, something they purposely add into the paper, again to show their authenticity. But the new notes have added another really cool security feature in the form of these short diagonal lines on the edges of each note. If you fold the notes round to form a circle, they perfectly line up, indicating that the note is likely genuine, as counterfeiters can have difficulty being so precise with their printing. And these notes have introduced some microprint too, seen in the stars in the middle of the note. If you look extremely closely, you'll see the word Euro repeating in 3 different alphabets. Again, something that counterfeiters cannot achieve with inexpensive printers. And what is probably my favourite hidden feature? Each note is secretly a flag of Europe in disguise. How cool is that? However, having said all that, you'd be right to accuse these notes of being boring. They're deliberately plain and devoid of any personality. Europe is an exceptionally diverse continent, with the finest architecture on the planet.
I assume that's part of the design. You don't want them to be too flashy, right? They need to have some sort of like boringness to them.
And yet they've opted for fictional designs. But I do understand it. These banknotes are used by an ever-increasing number of countries, and they can't be seen to favour certain ones. And where the banknotes fall short, the coins certainly deliver. The Euro coins are arguably the coolest and most collectible in the world. Each country has their own designs, and they can therefore be much more personal. The Colosseum features on the Italian 5 cents, for example, and the Brandenburg Gate on the German 10. And even some countries that aren't EU members have their own coins, such as San Marino and Vatican City. In total, there are more than 300 different designs across the different values and countries, making them an absolute dream for collectors. They most certainly make up for the lack of variation on the banknotes. But if that's still not enough, there are some Euro banknotes that are decidedly more interesting. This is a €0, a souvenir note
€0
printed on real banknote paper, with real security features and authorised by the European Central Bank. It has a watermark, glows under UV light, and feels and looks exactly as you'd expect a real Euro to. And whilst this one features the atomium in Brussels, like the coins, there are literally hundreds of different designs. So whilst the Euros themselves might be slightly dull, that's necessary. They're the second most traded currency in the world, and represent such a vast population area. And though they might have sacrificed some infinitely more interesting notes in the process, we got some pretty cool coins out of it, and the Euro has undoubtedly made life a lot easier.
Yeah, there's certainly something to be said, and it's like he said he wasn't really getting into the pros and cons of the economic side of things, depending on people's opinions and whatnot. I see the Philippines flag up on the top there, which is interesting because I was there recently, and I believe the Canadian dollar is about, it usually hovers around 38 peso to 40 peso, so meaning there is a lot of difference there, right? So when you have one Canadian dollar equaling 40 peso, it's just it's a big difference, right? When you're there, so it becomes, you're doing math constantly and trying to like figure out things, and when you're going to, and you have to deal with all the exchange rates and the commissions on those exchanges and whatnot. So, yeah. Anyways, cool, very cool video, man. Currency is obviously a very fascinating thing throughout human history, and the different currencies that we've had, and economic systems and ways of being able to communicate and trade and barter amongst each other for goods and services. So it's obviously pretty interesting part of humans, I would say. All right, we'll see you all in the next video. Take care, people. Later.